Carlos Mendez, a dedicated security guard at a busy San Francisco mall, thought his afternoon would be like any other. But, upon finding a girl crying and lost near the food court, he decided to take action. What he didn't know was that his empathy and professionalism would place him at the center of an event that would completely change his life. A simple attitude, a giant impact. Hello everyone, and welcome to Timeless Tales USA. I'm thrilled to bring you another captivating story today that I know you'll enjoy. The afternoon in San Francisco was sunny, but the mall was busy as usual. Carlos Mendez, 35 years old, was making his usual rounds, observing the shop windows, the excited families and the young people talking in groups. With an impeccable uniform and a radio on his hip, he was always on the lookout for any sign of trouble. Carlos had a dream, to leave his security job and become a police officer. However, the bills and stability kept him in his current job. He was respected by his colleagues, especially Julia, another young and ambitious security guard, and George, his direct supervisor, who often said, "Carlos, you have the talent for something bigger." During his patrol, Carlos hears a distant cry coming from the food court and decides to investigate. Carlos followed the sound and found a small girl, approximately 5 years old, sitting alone on a bench, with tears streaming down her face. "Hey my dear. Are you lost?" he asked gently. The girl looked at him, sobbing. "I can't find my mommy." Carlos knelt at her level, trying to convey calm. "What is your name?" "Sophia." He held her hand gently. "Let's go find your mommy, Sophia. I promise you're safe with me." While taking Sophia to the security checkpoint, Carlos noticed a suspicious man observing the scene. As they walked, Carlos noticed a man in a cap and dark jacket standing near a store, staring at them. His intuition warned him, but he decided to focus on taking Sophia to the security checkpoint. On the radio, he warned Julia. "Julia, I need eyes on the food court. We have a suspicious observer." Upon arriving at the station, Carlos began using the sound system to locate Sophia's parents. "Stay tuned, Sophia. I'm here for you," he said, looking at the door to make sure they were safe. Sophia's parents arrive, but the mystery man is still around. Minutes later, a couple ran into the security checkpoint, with faces of relief and despair. "Sophia," shouted the mother, hugging her daughter tightly. His father shook Carlos' hand gratefully. "I don't know how to thank you. You were an angel to us." But as Carlos watched the scene, he saw the man in the cap walking slowly past the mall entrance, pretending to be on the phone. Carlos decides to follow the man discreetly, but something unexpected happens. Carlos asked Julia to take care of the post while he followed the man. Keeping his distance, he saw him entering an electronics store and talking to a salesperson. Carlos pretended to window shop as he watched. The man seemed nervous, constantly looking over his shoulder. Carlos wrote down his description and reported it to Supervisor George. "It seems strange, but it could just be a coincidence," said George. Later, Carlos discovers that the man had been reported on another occasion for suspicious behavior around children. The next morning, Sophia's father, who was a journalist, published the story of the meeting on social media. Today, a security guard named Carlos Mendez saved the day. He was an example of professionalism and kindness. The post went viral, with hundreds of comments praising Carlos. "We need more people like this in the world," wrote one internet user. Carlos was surprised to see his photo shared so many times. Julia showed him the post at break. "You're famous now," she joked. Carlos receives an unexpected call from the mall administration. Carlos was called to a meeting with the mall's directors. "Carlos, we are impressed by your exemplary attitude. We want to publicly recognize him." He was thrilled, but also apprehensive. "I'm honored, but I was just doing my job." Meanwhile, George warned him. "With recognition comes responsibility, Carlos. Are you prepared?" Carlos discovers that the suspicious man has returned to the mall, increasing his concern. Julia warned over the radio. "Carlos, that man you mentioned is back." Carlos immediately went to the indicated location and politely confronted the man. "Can I help you with something?" The man became visibly uncomfortable and hurriedly left. Carlos discovers that the man has a criminal history, but the police need more evidence. After the confrontation, Carlos decided to review the security camera images. He saw the man walking around different areas of the mall, but his behavior differentiated him. He never went into stores, he just observed people, especially children. Carlos reported his findings to George and local security. "We need more information before we formally involve the police," George said. However, Carlos couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He asked Julia to help him keep an eye on the man if he returned. Carlos discovers a connection between the man in the cap and an incident that occurred at another nearby mall. Days later, while making his rounds, Carlos received a message from Julia. "He's back." This time, the man was bolder, walking closer to families and apparently observing interactions between adults and children. Carlos called for backup and confronted the man again, this time in a less crowded area. "You seem to be very interested in the mall lately," Carlos said, remaining calm. The man shook his head. "It's none of your business," he replied, leaving hastily. Carlos finds a backpack left by the man, leading to a shocking discovery. After the man hurriedly left, Carlos noticed a black backpack left on a nearby bench. Following protocol, he did not open it immediately, but asked for the area to be cordoned off. When authorities arrived and checked the backpack, they found a notebook with detailed notes of times and descriptions of children. "This is no coincidence," said one of the officers. Carlos felt a chill down his spine when he realized that his intuition was right. Authorities begin a full investigation, while Carlos' name gains more recognition for his vigilance. The story of Carlos and his surveillance was highlighted in local and, later, national news. He was interviewed by a TV station, where he shared his motivation. "My job is to make sure everyone feels safe here. It's not just a job for me, it's a responsibility." Meanwhile, police arrested the man in the cap and confirmed that he was involved in criminal activities related to child trafficking. Carlos is invited to participate in special security training, taking a step towards his dream of becoming a police officer. Impressed with his professionalism, local authorities offered Carlos a place in an advanced security training program. Julia encouraged him. "You deserve this, Carlos. I always said you were capable of greater things." The training was challenging, but Carlos excelled, showing exceptional leadership and conflict resolution skills. Carlos receives an offer to work directly with local authorities, but it means leaving the mall. After completing his training, Carlos was invited to join the local police force as a security consultant. George, his supervisor, called him in for a private talk. "Carlos, you are one of the best to ever work here. The mall will miss you, but I know you were born for this." Carlos was divided. He loved his job at the mall, but knew the opportunity to become a police officer was what he always wanted. Carlos makes his decision, but one last incident at the mall changes everything. On the day Carlos planned to announce his decision, a fire alarm sounded in the mall. Without hesitation, he led the evacuation, ensuring all customers and employees were safe. After resolving the situation, George said, "You never hesitate to act when necessary. Whatever you decide, you will always be a hero here." Carlos decided to accept the police's offer, but promised to continue visiting the mall and keeping in touch with the team that supported him. Carlos began his work as a security consultant, helping to protect the community on a larger scale. His story inspired other security guards to take their work seriously, showing that small acts can have big impacts. Months after starting his new job as a security consultant, Carlos was invited to a community event in San Francisco. During the event, he heard a familiar voice. "Carlos." It was Sophia, the girl he had helped, now with a radiant smile and holding a sign that said, "Thank you, Carlos, for being our hero." Beside her were her parents, who again expressed their gratitude. "You didn't just save our daughter that day. You showed us that there are people who really care," said Sophia's father. Carlos was moved to realize the lasting impact of his actions. Sophia's family reveals that they are helping to fund a community safety initiative, and Carlos is invited to lead the project. Inspired by the reunion with Sophia and her family, Carlos accepted to lead the community project called Circle of Safety, a training network for employees of shopping malls, schools, and other public spaces, focused on keeping children safe. He began organizing workshops, inviting colleagues like Julia to participate. "You always wanted to do something that impacted the community. This is your moment," Julia said excitedly. The program grew quickly, receiving praise from the community and local authorities. Carlos has become a symbol of how simple acts can lead to significant change. During one of the workshops, Carlos discovers a connection to an old case that still needed to be solved. During a workshop, a participant mentioned a similar incident involving a man acting suspiciously at another mall. Carlos realized that the descriptions of behavior and actions matched the man in the cap he had confronted months earlier. With this new information, Carlos worked with authorities to connect the dots between different cases. His experience and attention to detail helped dismantle a trafficking network operating in the region. "You did more than protect Sophia that day," said a local police officer. "You helped protect many children." Carlos' work in the Circle of Safety became a model for other cities, and he continued to inspire meaningful change in his community. His journey showed that courage, empathy, and determination can transform lives and create impacts that go far beyond what was expected. With the success of the Security Circle and the solution of important cases, Carlos began to attract national attention. He was invited to attend a conference in Washington, D.C., where he shared his experience with security and public policy leaders. During the conference, he received a plaque of recognition from the Department of Public Security, with the following inscription: "For their courage, dedication, and lasting impact in protecting our community." While receiving the award, Carlos reflected on the day he met Sophia. "I was just doing my job, but it taught me that small acts of kindness can have a huge impact." Carlos is approached by an international security organization that invites him to expand his work globally. During the conference, a representative of Global SafeNet, an international organization dedicated to protecting children, approached Carlos. "Your work is inspiring. We want you to bring the Circle of Safety to schools and communities around the world," said the representative. Carlos was excited, but also worried about the challenges this could bring. "I never thought of something this big," he admitted. Julia, who accompanied him at the event, encouraged him. "You've already changed lives here. Now it's time to take this further." Carlos accepts the offer, but must face the challenge of leaving his community while continuing to expand his mission. Before embarking on his new journey, Carlos organized one last event in San Francisco to train new leaders who would continue the Circle of Safety locally. He spoke emotionally. "San Francisco is where it all began, and it will always be my home. I am leaving this program in good hands because I believe that together we can continue to protect the future." At the end of the event, Sophia and her family were in the audience. Sophia gave Carlos a drawing with the words, "Thank you for saving my life and the lives of so many others." With tears in his eyes, Carlos promised to never forget his roots. Carlos embarked on his new global mission, but remained in constant contact with his community in San Francisco. He has become an international symbol of empathy and courage, proving that small acts of kindness can create ripples of change around the world. Enjoyed the story? Hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Tales USA for more amazing content. Share one word in the comments to describe how this story made you feel.